All right, into part three of this video. What's up with Unit 2? Well, Unit 2 and Unit 6, I'm going to ask you questions about on the last page of our exam. So let's talk about Unit 2. So Unit 2 is all about those verbs. So things I'm going to ask you about. Can you recall the verb expansion rule? So making sure you have that accessible in your yellow note to be really smart. Can you deconstruct and can you reconstruct a verb string? Is something I want to make sure you can do. Can you shift a sentence from active voice into passive voice and then back again? That's going to ask you to be able to change the verb as well as to actually shift the whole sentence around. So there's kind of two skills going on there. All right. And then lastly, I'm going to ask you what an E prime is, not necessarily to define it, but to actually apply it. All right. So I'll show you what I mean by each of those. So let's talk about deconstructing a verb string. So if I take something like should have been studying, back on quiz 2, it's a really important quiz to find in your notebook, is I would take this and I would use the verb expansion rule, which is listed here, and then deconstruct this verb. And so that would turn into the past of shall plus have plus en plus be plus ing plus study. Remember that ridiculous stuff? And so what this shows then is I can take that verb should, and it's going to be the past tense of the modal shall. I can see there's the word have, so have plus en drop down. There's an ing in studying, so that gives me be plus ing, and my main verb is study. If I gave you might have cheated, once again, when I break this down, might is the past tense of may. There's a have, so I add in have plus en. There was no ing, so I skipped that part, and my main verb is cheat. And it gives me past of may plus have plus en plus cheat. I'm also going to give you some reconstructing of the verb string. So I give it to you in its mathematical equation and say, hey, can you glue this back together? Which I typically think this is a little easier. So the past of will is would. There's have. En plus be is been, and ing plus dance should be dancing. It should make sense in your head when you reconstruct it. So would have been dancing is my whole verb. Another one, if I said the present of May plus be plus ing plus graduate, should be the present of May is still May. And then it wouldn't make sense to say may being graduate. All right. So don't think of it that way, but you're saying may be graduating. And so think about how that little tag of ing goes to the next word, may be graduating. Think about, though, there were some weird verbs that I gave you. So more than likely, I'll probably throw a few weird verbs at you. So make sure you know how to deal with those. Like the present of have plus en plus eat. Not so weird if I said has eaten or have eaten. All right, that's kind of easy. I agree, Alonzo. But what if I said the present of have plus en plus swim? Remember this one? It goes swim, swam, and then swum. So the en of swim is swum. So this could be either has swum or have swum. That's a little weirder. Here's another one. The present of have plus en plus seek. Well, we seek, and then we go into sought is our verb. So this would be has sought or have sought. Kind of weird, but just once again, be aware of the weird verbs. Another one, the present of have plus en plus bring should give us either has brought or have brought. But if you would say brung, technically you'd be right. It's something that we talked about at the very beginning of the year, that brung is actually grammatically correct. We just don't use it. And that was kind of applying what we called our grammar heart, which is something I'm going to talk about here at the very, very end. Think about how we change from passive voice into active voice, and from active voice into passive voice. So most missed question on our quiz, except for some of the matching, this is sometimes for some reason a tough concept for some people. So I took the sentence of Herbe performed a sock puppet opera of Wagner's The Flying Dutchman. If I change this into passive voice, we know how it works. I'm going to take that word performed, and passive voice is always one verb longer. So I'm going to change performed into was performed, or or were performed, one of those two. When I switch this over, then it turns into a sock puppet opera of Wagner's The Flying Dutchman was performed by Herbe. Bring up my little pointer for you. And so just remember a couple things when we change something over into passive voice. The subject turns into a by prep phrase. So now it's down here is by Herbe. The direct object, sock puppet opera, moves to the front, and my verb increases by one. So there's always that switcheroo where the front of the sentence goes to the back of the sentence goes to the front, and your verb increases. Now, what if I change it to active voice? So, what if I said, a recount of Abby's perfect exam score had been being sought by her disgruntled and jealous classmates? So, once again, the by prep phrase goes to the front. So, we have her disgruntled and jealous classmates. The front goes to the back, a recount of Abby's perfect score. And the verb now decreases by one. So, instead of saying had been being sought, 4 verbs, I have to change it to 3 verbs. And so, this one turns into her disgruntled and jealous classmates had been seeking a recount of Abby's perfect exam score. So the challenge here is to make sure you actually convert the verb correctly from had been being sought to had been seeking, and to switch things around the right way. So be careful of the active and passive voice. That's 2 points each. It's 4 points total out of 90 points, which would be pretty critical. So you don't want to lose those points. And then E prime would be the last question I'll ask about with verbs. So remember E prime, what that whole thing was about. I remember E prime, first of all, is not a thing. So don't call it the E prime thing. Remember, E prime was a derivative of the English language in which all your to be verbs are removed. That's what E prime was. So I would give you a sentence and say, hey, can you rewrite a sentence in E prime? So if I said something like, I was angry that Chick-fil-A was out of vanilla milkshakes and was asked to order chocolate instead. Well, in E prime, I want to get rid of any to be verbs. And I can see 3 of them. I have 3 was's. And so I want to find a way around that. So I'd ask you to take a sentence and write it in E prime. So there's all kinds of ways of fixing this. So here are some suggestions. I could say, I felt angry that Chick-fil-A sold out of vanilla milkshakes. So the cashier asked me to order chocolate again. Just my solution, but there's all kinds of ways of fixing it. But I'm trying to rewrite it so I don't use any to be verbs. All right, so be careful of the verb section. Sometimes it seems deceptively simple, but make sure you have some solid notes on your yellow paper. All right, so I have just 2 more things I want to take on, but I'll do it in one last little mini video for you.